This is Baikonur, the launching pad for journeys into space, of the first legendary one, and of those today, as the space age enters its third decade. On October 9, 1977, the Soyuz 25 craft was put into orbit. Its crew was to dock it with the Salyut 6 station. Everything seemed to be going without a hitch: blast off, orbit correction, and rendezvous. The craft entered the radio contact zone. Mission Control was expecting a report about the docking. But the report was different. The docking had not taken place. Setbacks are always unexpected. The first steps are the most difficult, and each step here is a step into the unknown. Each is a test of men and engineering. The ever longer roads of space. The sequences in space were filmed by cosmonauts from the USSR, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and the German Democratic Republic. A flight is the end result of the work of thousands of people. This is where it begins. Both the space technology and the spacemen have to be prepared. A familiar and yet unfamiliar creation, an orbital station of the second generation, the first to have 2 docking assemblies and an integrated engine unit, a station planned for many firsts. Up in space, it will become a home of friendship and brotherhood for cosmonauts from several socialist countries. This is the time to examine it, to ask questions, to dig deep. Those who have already been up there claim that thousands of contingencies may be simulated on Earth, but in space, you'll come up against the 1001st. So, one has to be prepared for the 1001st situation as well. The experience of past flights is of great value, as they set out for new experience. Ready for blastoff. For Georgy Gretchko, this is the second journey. For Yuri Romanenko, the first. Their mission is to be the longest so far. Ten minutes to go before radio contact. Group heads are told to report on readiness for radio contact. The craft approaches the station's second docking unit. a new space complex has come into being, consisting of Salyut 6 and Soyuz 26. The first few minutes aboard the station, the safety latch against undocking has been activated. For the complex for 1 month, for the two-man crew for 95 days. Today we call these long-term flights. True, 7 years ago, we spoke of a long-term flight when Nikolaev and Sevastyanov spent 18 days in space. And before that, we considered 5 days in the Space Odyssey. American astronauts had spent 84 days in orbit. The Soviet cosmonauts had to take a further step. The station came to life, warmed not only electrically, but by a human presence. The home now had masters, but would it be equally hospitable in the future? A station service life is limited. Everything hinges on resupplying it. This requires 2 docking units. One is operational. It's occupied by Soyuz 26. What about the second one? Is it in order? The decision is taken to emerge into raw space, check it, and if need be, repair it. A new, semi-rigid spacesuit, instead of putting it on, you walk into it. The life support backpack makes it a mini space station, only without an engine. This venture into raw space is the first test of the suit in real conditions. It's necessary to emerge from the station and carry out inspection and repair work. Of course, all this has been envisaged, but not so soon, and not with such urgency. There is as yet not so much experience of EVA, extravehicular activity. That is why every EVA is a big event. Here we go into the shadows for 20 minutes. I've emerged from the transfer compartment. I've carefully inspected the butt end of the compartment and 2 or 3 meters of the conic cowling. The butt end is flawless, as though just machine tooled. All the elements of the station, the lamps, antennas, batteries, instruments, are in perfect order. The main thing has been done. Everything is in order. The docking unit is in shape to receive a second spacecraft. That's Georgi floating in the hatchway, in utter darkness. With the black void, even the light from the stars does not penetrate the light filters. No, I do see stars. I lift my head, I can see the Earth. I too can see the Earth, Georgi. Some flashes of light on the Earth, and cities and towns float by. Yuri, those flashes were not from the engines. That was lightning. And I had thought I was seeing stars. Amusing. There have been many specialists here following your work up there. All of them are pleased with your performance. Congratulations. We'd like to have a rest, since we've been working hard for almost 24 hours. And if there was gravity here, we'd probably be lying prone now. Only weightlessness keeps us upright. Roger. Once again, Baikonur. Once again, a blastoff. The first space visiting expedition. And another first, an orbital station with 2 craft docked to it, the first such space complex ever. The Pamirs, the call signal of Vladimir Janibekov and Oleg Makarov, the first visitors aboard the station. Their flight solved a great many problems. Technology tested on Earth must be checked in flight, new experiments, and psychological support for the long-stay crew. After all, loneliness too has to be taken into account. The joint Soviet-French Soyuz experiment was concerned with the effect of space factors on microorganisms. Although this project did not involve much work, it was of great value as another step towards understanding complex biological systems. The Pamirs checked the controls of the space complex and rigidity, replaced the oxygen regenerators, repaired the electronics unit, and in general had plenty to do. The visit was also a morale booster. After such a long wait, visitors are very welcome, and not just for working. The Pamirs are to return to Earth in the spacecraft of their hosts. This is necessary to vacate the docking unit on the side of the transfer compartment. It was very interesting to work with our comrades. They gave us a boost morally. It was great to link up with our comrades in orbit. The 6 days flew by as if a day or two. It seemed we docked only yesterday, and today they're back on Earth. Then came yet another first, the world's first automatic cargo craft, Progress, first of a new series of Soviet transport vehicles. It opened up a new chapter in space exploration, bringing almost a ton of propellant, filters for harmful impurities, photo and cinefilm, and fresh air. In short, everything the crew needed by that time. The cosmonauts now had to master another profession, that of space dockers. Only now did the orbital complex acquire its final shape: research station, manned transport, and cargo spacecraft. True, the future may bring with it other innovations, such as research and technological spacecraft modules. They will add new units to the station. However, the present version will probably be with us for a long time. When Progress departs, it will take away the spent regenerators and absorbents and empty tanks. Before undocking, its engines will correct the orbit of the whole complex. The cargo craft itself will burn up in the dense layers of the atmosphere. No soft touchdown for it. For the present level of space economics and technology, this is the optimal way out. And again, the Pamirs are alone. Work in space and on Earth proceeds according to a single timetable. Another Soviet cosmonaut, Alexei Gubarev, and a cosmonaut from the Czechoslovak Socialist Republic, Vladimir Remek, are getting ready for a flight. Their journey into space from Baikonur began early in the spring. Two nations, two socialist states, opened up the epoch of international spaceflight. The trail blazed by Yuri Gagarin is now being followed by the first Czechoslovak cosmonaut, Vladimir Remek. Hello, Vladimir. Four men in orbit. One other item of news. A post office has been opened. Envelopes, stamp cancellations, the dream of a stamp collector. The first ones are dispatched to the country's museums. The first Postmaster General of a space post office, Georgy Gretchko. The scientific program of the international expedition was very extensive. They would be aboard the station for only a week, but had a great deal to do. The Morava industrial applications experiments and two new medical experiments prepared by Czechoslovak specialists, heat exchange and oxygen. A special oximeter instrument had been devised for this purpose. It measures the oxygen content in muscular tissue. Their mission also included observations of stars. A study of the Earth's surface and the oceans for science and the economy, filming and visual observations. Of course, many of the studies were devoted to the territory of Czechoslovakia. The time has come to part. They picked up all the mail, films, and research data. Again, the two long-stay cosmonauts are alone. Besides the day-to-day work in orbit, there are also holidays. They were the first ever to usher in the new year in space, but that was not the main thing. Their work gave them both joy and strength, and when Mission Control tried to protect them from overwork, they would reply, "Don't try to protect us from ourselves." It was proposed to put the station into the gravitation-stabilized mode for circular panoramic observations. Noctilucent clouds are a mystery still not fathomed to the end. To observe the glowing of the upper layers of the atmosphere became a common pastime. We turned to the mysteries of the stars and far-off worlds, but near space held out no fewer mysteries. What's that? Dazzling sunsets and the polar lights are not simply a riot of colors. That's how our planet converses with the cosmos. Complicated interrelationships exist between the Earth and outer space. Ultimately, perhaps, this is where earthly cyclones, bitter droughts, severe winters, and delayed springs take their beginning. We have just peered into a well, and the bottom is not visible. "3 months have gone by, and the mission entered its last chapter. to culminate in the undocking operation and the descent to Earth. "96 days in space. Time to return to Earth. They were sorry to leave the station. Their work was hard and the flight wasn't easy, nor was their solitary life. But men with strong willpower are always reluctant to part with a job that was tough. And this was not just a matter of surviving. A scientific program had to be carried out. It yielded thousands of photographs of the Earth and the oceans, unique observations of the upper atmosphere, dozens of materials processing experiments with the Splow furnace, and tests of the station. Then the most exciting undertaking, emerging into raw space, and the second docking, something Georgy Gretchko described as real men's work. The Earth they had looked forward to meeting for so long. The snow-covered steppelands of Kazakhstan. The lights aboard Salyut had been put out, but Mission Control continued to guide it in orbit unmanned and began to prepare for the next expedition. The experience of the time years served as a reference point for these men. Vladimir Kovalyonok set off for the station once again with Alexander Ivanchenko, the second long-stay crew. On board the station, there was a message for them. Vladimir and Alexander. For us, the station was a fine laboratory and a good home. Best of luck, time years. It is planned to add another 44 days to the record set by Yuri Romanenko and Georgy Gretchko, a total stay of 140 days. It was difficult to even imagine such a space journey. Some even questioned if it was really needed. Had the time come for such long periods of weightlessness? By their work, experiments, and discoveries, by their new experience, they demonstrated that the time for such long voyages had come. It was time to move on from sporadic experiments to profound, long-term research. The two cosmonauts conducted biomedics prepared an experiment involving the sense of taste. It is interesting to find out how a person's taste sensations change in weightlessness. Previously, there had only been purely subjective assays. Something seemed tasty, something didn't. Measurements will explain the reason for this. This, too, is a job rather than recreation. The videotapes were selected by psychologists. Cosmonauts, too, live not by bread alone. The experts want to know what kind of food for thought goes down best in orbit. Cosmonauts have to learn how to rest. How not just to expend physical and emotional energy, but also to replenish it. Doctors have recommended two-way radio conversations with the crew's families and favorite actors. The arrivals of visiting crews have become highly emotional events. Boosting morale is now part of Mission Control's job. Nevertheless, simply idle rest in orbit has proved unpopular. Work alone in orbit brings real satisfaction. Work such as the Polish alloy smelting experiment, Sirena. The capsules put into the furnace contained materials that are very hard to alloy on Earth. Their contrasting specific gravities separate them on Earth, preventing co-crystallization. Yet, perfect such crystals could become unique sensors for measuring infrared radiation. Weightlessness seems to be full of promise in this respect, but many more experiments have to be conducted, and the Sirena experiments are but one step forward in this direction. The days in orbit literally flew by. Soon it was time to start packing for the return trip to Earth. In general, protracted space journeys will be pointless without unloading the accumulated perishable data, such as biological cultures, films, and biochemical samples. The second international crew had a tightly packed but short program. The Caucasus, Klimuk and Hermashevsky soon returned to Earth. But the Photons still had a long journey ahead. After seeing off the visitors, they received the Progress 2 cargo ship. The crewmen mastered the profession of space dockers. They will have to unload 3 cargo ships. By the way, the job is not all that simple. Space is limited, there is no weight, but the mass of objects remains. Plenty of cargo is delivered, and it seems that even more is sent back. Only real flight experience can show the best ways of unloading, loading, installing, dismantling, and arranging the cargo. Refueling in outer space. An elementary operation on Earth, but unbelievably difficult in space. Mission Control lends a helping hand. Perhaps it's difficult because it's so new. After all, progress begins not only from something that's simple. There can also be progress from the complex to the simple. A new materials processing unit called Crystal is being installed on board the station. Another space furnace. Perhaps it will become the prototype of future factories in space. We shall see the output of Crystal later. Meanwhile, the crew and mission control are busy preparing. The photons are to emerge into raw space. This experiment has to be repeated. And that day arrived. The 45th day of the flight, July 29th. Rising time, midnight. This was the day 2 more cosmonauts walked into outer space. The names of Kovalyonok and Ivanchenko now stand alongside those of Leonov, Yeliseyev, Krunov, Romanenko, and Gretchko. The objective of this EVA was to transfer inside the station samples of coatings, rubber, optical glass, biopolymers, and micrometeorite sensors mounted on the outside of the station. They had been exposed to the whole range of space factors. Actually, they were priceless, since they would provide unique information. Good morning. How'd you sleep today? Normally, how many hours? 7.5 for me, that's normal. How about Vladimir? About 6 hours. How do you feel? Are you morally ready for tomorrow? Yes. A bit of advice before your EVA. First, you'll be opening the hatch towards the sun. This means there'll be a lot of glare on the station's skin. And in the first few moments, practically the whole interior will be blacked out on the background of that patch of sunlight. So don't be surprised. It'll take you 10 to 15 seconds to adapt to such a contrast. At first, try to get your bearings in the main according to structural elements. Don't look into the distance so as to keep the structures in proportion. One other thing, do everything very smoothly. This is no aircraft. There'll be no disturbing forces, no resistance, so go very slowly. When the hatch was opened, a powerful torrent of light flooded our transfer compartment, as if a silvery mountain river had emptied its waters into our station. Outside, it's terrific. You can sense the Earth turning. In general, you can sense motion and speed, especially on the night side. I could see the cities flicking by. Inside the station, you don't feel that. It's an amazing experience. One other interesting thing, you are pushed out of the exit hatch, and quite forcefully at that. A difficult stage of the flight was over. For the time being, the crew was out of touch. And perhaps it is at moments like this that we realize how complicated everything had been. Mission Control prepares the flight, it supervises it, and follows it closely. It takes over all the duties it can when the crew is sleeping. And they are able to sleep because people here are on duty. Mission Control has a tremendous job on its hands, and it takes pride in the exploit of the men in orbit. Once again, the spacesuits bear the emblems of 2 countries. The Soviet cosmonaut, Valery Bykovsky, is setting out on his 3rd space journey, this time with the first cosmonaut from the German Democratic Republic, Zygmunt Yen. Their stand-ins, too, are ready. Viktor Gorbatko and Eberhard Koerner. They have to be ready right up until the final day. This will be with them in orbit, a symbol of friendship and brotherhood, a symbol of man's reason and daring. The crew in orbit are ready to welcome their guests. It's been lonely without people. The traditional bread and salt welcome. This one from the crew rations. Yet another first, a start in space for a fraternal country, the beginning of a new joint program. Besides all the investigations already carried out on board the station, there will now be experiments to assess the sense of time at zero gravity. But most important of all, of course, is the MKF-6M camera. This has been a joint undertaking of the two countries. It was produced at the Carl Zeiss Jena nationalized plant in the German Democratic Republic. 6 lenses, 6 light filters, 6 spectral bands, and each picture in 6 color-coded copies. We are still learning to comprehend all this information, but what we've already fathomed and achieved makes the space flight important not only for history, but for our present-day needs on Earth. The Earth has not simply broadened before our eyes. The previously invisible has become visible. Faults in the Earth's crust, which could not be detected by ground surveying. Ring-like structures not plotted on geological maps. What previously seemed unrelated has now turned out to be connected. A new planet is being discovered in our familiar Earth. The materials processing experiments continue. The ampules contain tellurium, lead, bismuth, and antimony. The objective is to produce flawless semiconductors. And this is the result. Precious space stones. Their value will be assessed on Earth. Of course, these are only the first ones. Nevertheless, one takes pleasure in seeing this man-made extraterrestrial matter, something that cannot be made on Earth, yet something that the Earth really needs. Another change of craft. They take the host's craft and leave their own behind. The visitors are going one way, while the photons, with their individually contoured couches and spacesuits, move in the opposite direction. Finally, an exchange of spacecraft documentation. The visitors are on their way home with a cargo of film, ampules containing crystals, and of course, letters for home. On board Salyut, the lights are on. And this is against weightlessness. Every day for 2 or 3 hours. If you miss a day, your muscles become flabby, and readaptation on Earth will be more difficult. On Earth, physical exercises are a treat, but here it's a job, a heavy, monotonous job. The struggle against zero gravity never ends. Of course, one could survive 140 days in orbit by paying a lesser price. But Mother Nature is wise. If there is no workload, no muscles are necessary, no strong skeleton. Actually, a spaceman could lead a life of pleasure without exertion, but he would have to give up the idea of returning to Earth. A spaceman has to learn how to take a shower. From the top comes the water and warmed air, just as in a wind tunnel. These showers are more eloquent than words. They show we are in space in earnest, for long. Checkups are a must. Muscles, normal. Weight, too. That is, orbital weight, which is measured as mass by a mass meter. This is only the beginning. We have but touched the edge of the universe. From orbit, we look down on Earth and into outer space. The biggest scientific instrument on board the station is the sub-millimeter telescope. Its 1.5-meter mirror was, during the flight, trained on the Earth's atmosphere and on outer space. Sophisticated sensors, cooled by liquid helium, pick up barely detectable rays, evidence of complex and baffling processes. These rays do not reach the Earth. The atmosphere acts as a shield, preventing them from reaching instruments on the ground. The space flight should yield new information on this. But to look from orbit does not yet mean to see, and even to see does not yet mean to comprehend. The planet still holds many secrets, but man has patience and an inquisitive mind. Dark spots on the ocean. This means plankton. The ocean currents appear multicolored. And above them, their contours are copied by clouds. And cyclones have twirled their spirals. The central eye of a typhoon is a zone of relative calm, surrounded by a raging hurricane. Fan-shaped cloud formations resembling a staircase above the ocean. Below it, there are perhaps currents not yet recognized from the Earth. Nature is full of wonders. We observe a familiar phenomenon with amazement. Another mystery, another question. There are many such questions, all of them different. Well, we fly into space not only for answers, but for questions as well. They are the crux of investigations, the motive force of progress. The days ticked on, one by one. The record of the time errors has been eclipsed. The teletype on board has received 1,000 radiograms. Fewer and fewer empty slots remained in the program. The return to Earth was drawing closer, but life aboard the station was as busy as ever, with its daily timetables, orbits, and communication sessions. Only the schedule became still tighter. The main thing now was to do as much as possible in the remaining time. Homeward bound. They are leaving not a temporary shelter. For 139 days, the station was a home for them, a warm and comfortable home. And for those on Earth who had sent them up here, who had placed their faith in them, they had completed the longest space journey yet. Their tremendous experience will benefit those who follow in their footsteps. Here it is, the final day and the first day, the last day in orbit, the last day for mission control, and the first day of their reunion with Mother Earth. It was an overcast day. There was a smell of moist soil. They had left in June and returned in November. The longest space journey to date had come to an end, and in presenting decorations to them, President Leonid Brezhnev said, "At the dawn of the space age, it was difficult even to dream of such a swift development of cosmonautics. To live for so long in the unusual conditions of space is a real exploit. To work in space, moreover to work so fruitfully as comrades Kovalyonok and Ivanchenko have done, is a double exploit." This exploit was prepared by the whole nation. Our work in outer space continues work on the ground. Thousands of roads converge here at the Cosmodrome. Thousands of roads for that one, that which with every flight becomes longer and longer. Script, Vsevolod Ivanov and Pyotr Pelikhov. Direction, Vladimir Sivkov. Photography, Taris Aleynikov and Boris Smirnov. A Moscow Popular Science Film Studios production.